I am excited to welcome up Dr. Lina Traslaviña Stover, Executive Director of Heartland Worker Center.
I'm 5 foot tall. If I stand behind here, all you see is a head talking to you. So I'm going to try this. Can you hear me just fine? Is the microphone? All right. And they gave me 10 minutes, and I'm used to an hour or 2 hours or so. So I wrote my things down. There were 3 questions that they asked me, and hopefully in these 10 minutes, I will answer them. The first is to introduce myself. Then I get to tell you a little bit about the context on immigration, and we're talking about budgets. And the last part is sharing some policy. So I'll start with the first one. I'm going to take this microphone. There we go. That feels a lot better. My name is Lina Traslaviña Stover. I'm originally from Colombia, and Nebraska has been home for the past 24 years. And like many immigrants, I'm not sure if Nebraska chose me or if I chose Nebraska. I tell you that when I come in the border, they look at me and they're like, Nebraska? Every single time. And yeah, it's been home 24 years. Usually you have someone to blame. And my older brother is who I get to give the credit to. He received a scholarship to play tennis at UNK. And as the little sibling, it was easier for me to go to Kearney. So I ended up going to Kearney and knowing that I would not stay in Kearney nor Nebraska, no matter how much you paid me. Because I came from Bogota, Colombia, 8 million people. So coming to a state that only has 2 million people, talking about neighborhoods, right? It's just a little bit larger. So, well, of course, things don't go as planned. And I'm still in Nebraska. I eventually moved to the big city, Omaha, because I needed to be in a big city environment. Now I have 2 little Nebraskans. So I think that Nebraska, now, today, I choose it to be my home. I serve as the executive director for the Heartland Worker Center, an organization where we develop leaders, we promote workers' rights, and we foster a culture of civic engagement among underrepresented and immigrant communities. And I am one of the 152,000 foreign-born that exist in Nebraska. 152,000 people were not born in Nebraska that are currently living in the state. So when we think about budgets, and when we think about the policies that we need to create, certainly one of them is retaining them. We need to retain these 152,000 people in our state because our economy will not survive if they leave. Just like any other 100,000 in the state of Nebraska, we simply cannot afford to lose population in Nebraska. The immigrant population then represents about a 7.7% of the population, right? So always keep that small piece of the pie in mind because any of the policies that we are discussing do affect the 7.7% of the population, but of course, other populations as well. Since I mentioned my kids, I have to also kind of add them to the formula. There are about 77,000 US-born children with at least one parent that is an immigrant. So when I add these numbers, over 200,000 people are immigrant themselves or have a direct link to an immigrant in Nebraska. And again, in a state of 2 million people, this number should be of priority to us. A leader that I admire once told me that every decision we make, it's a matter of a trade-off. And I think that budgets are the clearest examples of this truth. Where we choose to spend our dollars reflects our values, our priorities, and ultimately the future that we want to build together. Right now in Nebraska, we're facing choices that define whether a state remains prosperous, welcoming, and vibrant, or whether fear and division undermine that future. Little bit of the context, and by the way, 2025 has given some experiences, and I'm going to say maybe interesting experiences in terms of the immigrant context. One of the things that we do know is that there is a general anti-immigrant rhetoric. And it goes from, I'm not sure who we want in the state anymore, and actually in the country anymore. But a little bit of the context before 2025 happened. Nebraska is demographically aging. And as we've heard, towns are shrinking in populations, grocery stores are disappearing, restaurants are closing. And one of the populations that we actually see thriving and that we see engaging both economically and with every entity in all these towns is the immigrant population. Our industries, thank you. Our industries from hospitality, healthcare, agriculture, construction, STEM, are depending on immigrant labor more than ever. In order to keep our economy going, we ought to maintain the workforce that is already doing the work. In the interesting changes that have happened in 2025, I'm going to talk about 4 changes that I think are very important right now, and these have happened in the past 3 weeks. So invite me over again in 3 weeks, and I bet you I'll have 3 more changes then. The first one, the day that the McCook detaining camp was announced, there was, of course, a lot of uproar, and there was all kinds of opinions. But a more damaging announcement was done parallel to that announcement, that I need we all to give our opinion, and that is the engagement in 287G agreements. 287G agreements deputize police officers or state patrols to become ICE officers. And there are incentives to join these 287G agreements. The data has shown that fiscally, although they sound amazing, they're not that amazing for the small towns or the rural towns that are trying to implement them. I would refer you, because I only have 10 minutes, there is a great article by NPR that came out this week about 287G agreements in Nebraska, and how some rural towns engaged the agreement in 2025 and actually have already moved out of the agreement because it's not fiscally, they're not fiscally able to continue this agreement. It has been announced that the state patrol will engage in the 287G agreement. What that means is that if I'm stopped because I have something hanging on my mirror, which by the way is illegal, and think about how many of you have something hanging in your mirror right now, in your car. So if I'm stopped for that, then the officer can infer all kinds of questions if they stop me and I have an accent. Thanks to also the other thing that has changed recently, which is the Supreme Court, hopefully temporary, order that if there are 2 reasons for suspicion, and the reasons for suspicion is, by the way, being in an environment that is proportionally has more immigrants than others, that is one suspicion. If you speak another language, that's a second suspicion. So get in my car. If I'm quiet, nothing happens. But the minute that they ask, can I have your registration? And I say something, then my accent comes out, and now I am suspicious. So these 287 G agreements and this announcement that the State Patrol is going to engage in this 287G agreement really paralyzes communities. In Omaha alone, when you think about Highway 6, State Patrol can stop people on Highway 6, also known as Dodge Street. I-80, Highway 75. So now the risk of taking my kids to school by driving and being stopped and maybe being detained reasonably or maybe unreasonably, right? Because we are hearing that the detentions that are happening are not always following due process. As a naturalized citizen, I have the right, and I know my right to say I'm a citizen, and that should stop everything. Do I trust that will be stopping? To be honest with you, that's why I carry my passport. Because I am fearful that my own family, and I have the language, the education, the social capital to be able to navigate all kinds of systems. And I am afraid that my family could be separated. Because even if I am detained for one day, what is the trauma for my kids for that one day that I didn't come home? And that matters. They're stopping me already. Told you, I wrote my remarks. Hold on, I'm going to go into the last one. I'm not leaving. So when people are afraid of authorities, we know that communities are not safer. When we know that crimes go unreported, we know that cooperation with law enforcement declines, and we know that trust is broken. So what kind of budget do we need to build? We need a welcoming budget that invests in people, not in fear. It's a budget that prioritizes education, healthcare, workforce development, community safety over detention and enforcement. Investing in language access, investing in workforce development for immigrants, investing in education so children can thrive regardless of the status of their families. And this also includes early education. And I think that I want to ask a couple questions, that I want to leave you all with a couple questions. How do we want to grow as a state? Do we want to grow together in fear, exclusion, and division? Or what is the alternative? Again, it's all about trade-offs. And I think that the last question that I'll share, if I find it, might not find it in here, but is the punishment for wrongdoing proportionate to the wrongdoing itself? I think that is a question that we need to consider ourselves as we really build safer communities. And thank you. I think that was 11 minutes.